How's it going, guys? We're back for another SBT playoff match in the C League. And I haven't seen this match yet. I'm actually doing a post recording of this. And this is the first round where we have Ryan Scar and his London Lucarios versus Gryoine and his Peterborough Palpitoads. So I'm recording this after the fact, and so I don't know exactly who won this match, but we're going to find out together. So let's go over their teams really quickly. Ryan brought his Zeraora, his Empoleon, his Megalodios, Sneasel, Uxie, and his Landers Therian. While Gryoine brought his Umbreon, Zygarde 10%, the Galvantula, Piloswine, the Superior, and his Metagross. So it doesn't look like Gryoine ended up bringing both his Mega Audino and his Celesteela. So he opted to think that those two were not that great in this matchup. Of course, Celesteela is a very nice wall against Ryan's team, especially with Ryan having the Mega Lottie. Of course, Zeraora is really the only kind of check, the only thing that can really check it there. Of course, I'm pretty sure Ryan would have prepped heavily for that thing, especially knowing that Landers can't really touch the Celesteela without something like Gravity or Smackdown, so he might have had some kind of countermeasure, maybe like Thunderbolt on Uxie, Thunderbolt on a couple other things. It looks like Gryoine, in fact, has a very nice lead, has a lot of good lead options, especially with the Galvantula being there. Now, of course, the webs don't help him too much, if I were to guess, just because the Landers, the Uxie, the Latios, Empoleon could have Defiant, stuff like that. Of course, it does help for the Zeraora maybe in the late game, but maybe the Galvantula being brought here might have been more offensive or Scarf or something like that, you know? It's just that he can't really lock himself into one of his two stabs, so of course, Galvantula is very nice to counteract that Empoleon, which Ground doesn't really have too many switches into, besides the Superior and the Umbreon, of course. So we'll end up seeing what their leads are here. I just want to remind you guys that these two, they had faced off earlier in the season, and Ryan came out coming on top there. So this is the battle of the 3rd seed versus the 6th seed. Ryan being the 6th seed, finishing the season at 6-5, and Gryoine being the 3rd, finishing the season at 7-4. So they're battling to see who moves on to the next round and face off against Rizzo. So very interesting match for sure. Let's just hop right into it. Let's see who the potential leads are. And it looks like Gryoine ends up leading with his Piloswine, perhaps to get up some rocks, as Ryan ends up leading with his Zeraora, maybe to get some initiative here, or just fake out, or taunt anything that wants to come in, maybe taunt it on that Galvantula not to get up webs, but honestly, webs wouldn't hinder him too much, so, but being the fastest mon on the playing field, barring any potential Scarpers, is very nice for Ryan. He can safely just, come in with the Zeraora. Of course, being in here with the Zeraora against the Piloswine is very hindering for him, because now he has to deal with the fact that he might take a potential Earthquake. But I think Gryoine really just wants to get up his rocks early match. Ryan's only defoggers, being the Landers, the Lottie, and the Empoleon. And of course, neither one of those can really safely defog on this thing, so barring any potential berries that Empoleon or Landers could have. So let's see what they end up going for here, as Ryan does go for that taunt, so he really doesn't want Gryoine getting up his rocks, as Gryoine makes a very nice aggressive play and goes for the Earthquake, as Ryan actually swaps out into his Uxie, predicting another one of those, and Gryoine making another aggressive play, going into his Galvantula, predicting perhaps a close combat, or just a swap out into the Lottie slash the Uxie, of course, because really Ryan's switch-ins to a ground type move are his levitating mons, but Ground could easily predict that and get some initiative there. So Ryan, of course, does not want to take a potential Specs hit here, so he swaps out into his Landers. Landers taking that pretty well, but we find out that this Galvantula is Life Orb, so he could have the Hidden Power Ice. And if this Landers isn't Scarfed, he's going to have to potentially take a gigantic hit here. Even if he's a berry, he'll be taking a lot of damage, but he could feel it's necessary to break down this Galvantula, because he could take him out with an Earthquake right here. And of course, the ground doesn't have an immunity to an Earthquake, so I would imagine in Ryan's situation, he wants to keep this Landorus potentially healthy, so that he can maybe take on the rest of Ground's team in the late game. Because again, he can clean up if he thinks that Earthquake is his win con. So let's see what Ground opts to go for. I think so Pileswan actually wants to come in, maybe predicting something else to come out. Sneasel comes out on Ryan's end there. Of course, maybe predicting Surf to come out. And Gryoine ends up getting up his rocks. So very nice aggressive play on Gryoine's part there. Going into his Pileswine on the Earthquake. He knew that he could take any kind of hit and perhaps scare that Landorus out to the point where rocks can just go for free there. Alright, so the Galvantula actually opts to come in on this Uxie, as Uxie might want to get up his own rocks here. So we'll see what ends up happening here. He actually just takes a big Psychic, and that does a lot of damage. Ryan ends up taking a Bug Buzz with that Galvantula, and I think that Gryoine deemed it was worth getting this gigantic hit, because Uxie is a wall that needs to be broken down for stuff like Gryoine's Zygarde, his Metagross potentially, even the Serperior to kind of break it down. So Serp can come in now and actually set up a +2 Leaf Storm. And if it's Scarf, if it's something crazy to perhaps hit that Latios, it's not going to be a good time. So you could potentially be the Z Dragon Pulse to perhaps take on that Latios. But we could see Ground making a very offensive play here and going to the Serperior. If not, he might want to go into the Metagross, but I would imagine, you know, Serperior can come out here if Ground thinks that it's a nice middle ground, you know, to break down Ryan's team right here, so that maybe Zygarde can clean up later, or maybe Metagross. We'll have to just see what he ends up going for. So he does go into the Zygarde, so I guess he just thinks that it's better to go into something you know, that Ryan can't switch into at this point. Ryan does end up going to the Empoleon. He could have the Shucker Berry, of course, and I think Ground thinks that it's necessary to just get rid of the berry on this Empoleon right here. And of course, Ryan can't take another one of those, so Landorus has to come out. If it's not defensive, it's going to be 2-hit KO'd from this. It's actually a bit more bulky than I imagined, but in comes the Piloswine. And we do see the Rock Polish coming off of Landorus, so very nice play on Ryan's end there. If that Zygarde was banded, and it very well could have been, then of course Ground wouldn't have any other switch-ins, but he was probably predicting the Zygarde to maybe take a huge hit. And of course Zygarde could have taken that hit, but I think Gryoine thinks it was just a better play to go into Piloswine altogether, because an Ice Shard would be doing a lot of damage to this Landorus. And I'm not too sure, but I think Landorus can actually take an Ice Shard if he has the Yachi Berry here. So I would imagine Ryan is actually a team move. But going for the Rock Polish is a very ballsy play on Ryan's end there, because of course the Piloswine can always come in to revenge him later. So maybe the Yachi Berry is Ryan's item. We have already seen the Shuck Berry on Empoleon, so let's see what ends up happening here. Does end up swapping, take the Ice Shard with Sneasel here. Sneasel can easily go for the low kick or the knockoff. The knockoff is a very nice play to get rid of the Violite, to make it so that this Piloswine won't be able to take any more hits later. Of course, he ends up taking a huge hit with Sneasel with that Earthquake, but Piloswine ends up getting rocks back up again. Empoleon comes in. So Ryan was either sacking off the Empoleon there, or just predicting the rocks to come up. We could see the Defog coming off here. Of course, the Defog would raise the accuracy of Serperior, but Gryoine making a very aggressive play here into the Serperior, knowing that Empoleon probably is not going for a Scald or an Ice Beam. So let's see if he goes for the rocks or defogging in here. We do see the Scald, so it does very little damage and no burn, and no item shown on the Superior, so it could actually... I think what's interesting is, of course, I think Gryoine forgot to change the... now this could just be me thinking that he made a mistake here, but it looks like this Superior is Overgrow, which I'm not sure if Gryoine meant to do that. Maybe he's a support set or like a Swords Dance set, but that's very unfortunate that he doesn't have the contrary. But let's see what ends up happening here. I don't know exactly if that was a mistake or not. Let's see. Oh, yeah, so it does look like that was a mistake on Gryoine's end there, because Superior, had he set up a couple Leaf Storms, he does become very much threatening in the late game, but now that he's Overgrow and not Contrary, he cannot boost. So he's gonna be forced to swap out here, unfortunately, and Latios can come in and set up if he wants to, but he does end up taking down that Empoleon, so it could be very much worth it on Gryoine's end to get rid of that Empoleon. The thing is, though, Empoleon wasn't too much of a threat for Gryoine's team. Like, yes, it does open up Metagross, and that could be what Gryoine wants, because Metagross, if he's something like Rock Polish, the fact that Gryoine was sitting on the Metagross throughout this beginning part of the match into the middle end means that he's probably most likely set up maybe like Weakness Policy or like a barrier or something, maybe to take on the rest of Ryan's team. Of course, Ryan, the Sneasel cannot take on the Metagross anymore if it has something like Bullet Punch, and of course Metagross can't be intimidated either with that Landorus, so we'll have to see here. I'm not sure if the Superior is the move, but it does seem like it would be. So Gryoine, realizing that the Superior is going to be set up fodder in the late game, he doesn't need it anymore. It does outspeed things like the Latios, but I don't think he can really utilize it anymore, especially with it being Overgrow. So he just lets it go, and Sneasel taking that kill. He could potentially be banded into that Icicle Crash. Not too sure. I don't think he would be, especially with how much damage that knockoff did to Piloswine earlier. But Piloswine ends up coming in here to potentially just get off an Ice Shard, and Ryan's running out of switch-ins to this Piloswine, so he might just have to let this Sneasel go down. He doesn't want to have to take an Earthquake with Zeraora, and he doesn't really want to take an Ice Shard with Lottie or Landorus. So I think Ryan just lets the Sneasel go down. He actually just lets the Zera go down, thinking that he's not going to be able to break Ryan's the rest of Ryan's team, especially with two ground types and two very bulky mons. Of course, Piloswine has lost its Eviolite, so he does become a little bit more. He does become a bit more vulnerable to wall breakers. I'm not too sure if Ryan saving the Sneasel was his best play, but knowing that Zygarde is still around, he could think that Ice Shard is still very necessary in the late game, especially with Zygarde still being at full. So I'm not too sure what Ryan's play is here, honestly. He could have to go into the Latios and maybe try to set up on this, but that's very aggressive, and I don't even think the Landorus can come in here. So Latios does have to come in. It does have to try to break this Piloswine, but of course Gryoine brings in his counter, his immediate counter being the Umbreon, knowing that Latios cannot touch this Umbreon. But of course, being Latios, he can always just try to set up here, try to go for a suck, try to go for a Calm Mind. Ryan ends up swapping out to the Landorus to have to take a foul play, which is very unfortunate because it just drops the Landorus, and I don't think Ryan's able to break down any more of Gryoine's team here. But he could potentially get a flinch, and he does not get the flinch, and there goes the Sneasel. And it just comes down to Ryan's Latios versus this Umbreon. And of course, I'm pretty sure Gryoine built this Umbreon specifically to take on anything this Latios wants to do,
we do see foul play doing a decent amount of damage, and of course we could see some recover stalling here, but um, Gryoine's gonna have to come up on top, especially if he gets a crit, and he does. Um, and this could go on for a little bit here, um, to the point where, of course, recover is going to run out before the foul plays. We could see another crit, of course. We do see the toxic, so that's gonna have to wrap up the game. We could see 2 Dragon Pulses here, and we might see a Wish or a Protect, and Gryoine's going to end up taking the game 4-0, due to the fact that he just didn't have, Ryan just didn't have the proper wall breakers in this match to take on Gryoine's responses. Ryan probably anticipated things like the Celesteela or the Odd Note coming back. And there goes the Latios in the late game there. So that's going to be the game, guys. It looks like Gryoine does move on to the next round, and unfortunately Ryan does not move up to the B League next season. Very close, very close run for Ryan. He did very well, especially with his team. He had a lot of strong bonds, but just wasn't enough to move him up to the B League next season. So perhaps next season, there's always more seasons. Gryoine, a very strong player. Congratulations to him for moving up to the B League next season. Him and his team have to now face Rousseau to see who wins in the second round. And yeah, that's going to be the first round of the C League playoffs, guys. We do have another match. Of course, we're going to have to see Dix versus Star, and not sure if they've played already while I'm recording this, but good luck to those guys. So that's going to be the game, guys. And again, GG to both players.